All right, great. I think we'll just get started here. So hello, everyone. I'm Joanna. I'm with GSN Planet. Welcome to our roundtable discussion today. We are really thrilled to have all of these really talented and amazing folks who are pioneers in the sustainability movement with us here today. So I'd like to just talk a little bit about what's going to happen today. So basically, this is a roundtable discussion led by Charné le Roux. She is in Cape Town, South Africa. We're thrilled to have her here with us. She's with Trevor, Michael, and Kenzie, and Charné is going to introduce them all. What I'd like to share is that this is a conversation about sustainability metrics for spa and wellness businesses. And I think that it's meant to be a casual conversation and for our folks to kind of share what they're doing and what they're practicing in their businesses with all of you. And we will kind of wait until the end to take some questions. And we hope to have this be a really, informative and engaging session, and really appreciate everyone for being here. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Charné.
Thank you very much, Diana. And hello, everybody. Welcome to this important conversation around sustainability metrics. And thank you very much to GSN Planet for hosting this discussion. I feel very privileged to share this virtual table with my esteemed panel. And I will introduce them to you now, and then we can move straight into our talk. Kenzie Vath is the Vice President of Strategic Innovation at Pacific Hospitality Group. She's responsible for the group's sustainability and wellness programs. She's also a GSN Planet board member. Michael Stasser is the founder of Osmosis Day Spa Sanctuary. He's also the co-founder of GSN Planet. Michael, you started the organization 16 years ago, and you are really one of our industry's sustainability pioneers. I really look forward to talking to you. Trevor Steyn is the founder of S Skincare. Trevor, you were responsible for the first probiotic serum in the world. But what I found very remarkable about your company is the fact that your entire skincare range is certified organic, and the company is carbon neutral. I really can't wait to hear more about that. My name is Charné le Roux. I'm with GreenSpa.Africa, and we specialize in developing sustainability tools for the spa and the wellness industry. And we were talking about one of those tools a little bit later. It's the GreenSpa Calculator. It's a measurement tool for spas, and it's a tool that has been coming a long way. The development started about 10 years ago. And we only recently launched the app version. But in the process, it really got me thinking about measurement. And the question on my mind was why our industry does not measure more. There are very, very few properties that actually engage in the measurement process. And it really was the impetus for this conversation, and perhaps the first obvious question around why we measure our sustainability efforts. And I'm going to ask Trevor to share some of your insights, but before I do, allow me to lay the table a little bit with my own experience of measurement in our industry. When I became involved about 17, 18 years ago, our management systems were rather rudimentary. We certainly knew which of our therapies were the most popular. We knew whether we made a profit or not, but it's revolutionized in the last couple of years to the extent that we now measure our key performance indicators. We extract our financial data, our marketing data, and our staff turnover figures. And we gather that intelligence in order to strategize business and marketing decisions. I mean, we know which clients prefer which treatments when. We know which therapists are better at which therapies. We know which of our facilities are profitable and which underperform. We know whether our guests are returning guests or whether we're mainly attracting new ones. And we know this because we measure better. I mean, the same also applies to the spa industry as a whole and the beauty industry as a whole. The British Beauty Council, for the first time in 2019, measured the size of the beauty industry in the UK. And it learned from that measurement process that the beauty industry was larger in the UK from a GDP contributory perspective than the motor vehicle industry. And that knowledge really placed it in a strategic position when negotiating with policymakers. That was important insight. We all know GWI, the Global Wellness Institute. They regularly measure the size of the wellness economy. And that is also very important information on which investors and business owners make their decisions. But what I'm also very interested in is what happened in the sustainability world. And the same evolutionary process in a way happened there too. There was a lot of focus on reporting up to now, to the extent that companies considered reporting their sustainability impact a very important fiduciary duty. In fact, I don't know of any listed company anywhere in the world that nowadays does not include a sustainability report along with its integrated financial reports. But what was lacking in these sustainability reports was the numbers crunching, the impact assessments and the measurements. It's really only starting to happen now. We now see a lot of measurement programs out there, and they are referred to as triple bottom line accounting and the like. So the world of sustainability is now introducing the concept of measurement quite aggressively. What I want to know is the story that the measurement process can tell us. And I'm going to ask Trevor to share some of your insights and your carbon program. I mean, that is one of the oldest systems that we have, and it's really widely accepted. The climate impact that we measure through our carbon footprint. How has that helped you make different management decisions?
So, yeah, I think from our point of view, we started out with, I guess, a very idealistic understanding of what, of where we were headed. I didn't start this company really because I felt particularly passionate about skincare. The company was started primarily as an alternative business model. My wife and I were growing vegetables out in the hills, and I guess figured eventually that nobody really cared about that, and that if we didn't like the system, we'd better show an alternative. So I think we hold ourselves accountable to that, and maybe we've become stricter with ourselves as I've watched some of my university friends drift around. I think that's where the real learning comes. When you start to see things that you thought were amazing as a student, where you see these oh well, we're going to do it like this, and that's definitely the way, and then you start auditing it, and the chips fall perhaps in a different way to what you thought they might. So I guess we were certified already organic in 2004, so we were submitting ourselves to external audit at that point. And I think our markets are primarily in Europe and Scandinavia, with some markets in the East. But those organic standards don't necessarily incorporate very well some of our more biodiversity goals, and particularly our carbon and plastic neutral goals. And I think when we started seeing those first carbon audits coming through, they make for unpleasant reading sometimes. You make the assumption that plastic is always awful, and largely we still make that assumption. but yeah, I think in the early days of cradle to cradle standards, where you have this ideal that we're going to subscribe because that is the goal, to have this indefinitely recyclable world where the petrochemicals that were harvested just cycle indefinitely. But at some point you're going to have to face the music. like America's current plastic recycle rate has dropped down to 8.7%. So it doesn't really make any difference for us to include, one plastic, one material in the true cradle to cradle mechanism. If we're losing a 93% of the material in any case to landfill. So yeah, I think from our point of view, yeah, it's made some changes to how we audit ourselves and how we submit ourselves to external audit. Yeah, and just to Michael's point earlier, it's not really enough. Sustainable sucks. We need to do more. It needs to be regenerative. So on the plastic neutral side, we've committed to recovering 2 kilograms of plastic out of the ocean for every 1 kg that we use. And it's the same with carbon. So for every kilogram of carbon that we emit, we recover 2 kilograms. But actually, I say that as if it's already happening. It only starts in March this year. But yeah, that's our financial year end. But yeah, I think when you subject yourself to external audit, that's the first time you really start seeing. You get out of marketing speak. You get out of your own narrative, which is important.
No, yes, thanks. I mean, and it does tell the story of what you're getting wrong and where you can improve. I want to share 2 examples of just on the waste management side of my experiences. In both cases, the spas conducted waste audits. Now, in the first instance, the waste audit disclosed to the spa that it had a major packaging problem. And it allowed it to enter into negotiations with its suppliers. That culminated in the creation of a sustainable procurement policy, which gave the spa much greater insight into its supplier value chain. It also opened the door to an investigation of blockchain technology for traceability, which is really a very interesting conversation on its own. But what it did do, it forced the suppliers to innovate. It forced them to innovate around packaging that was compostable. It forced them to innovate around the product itself, looking at powdered and dehydrated products that reduce the size of the packaging, and it forced them to innovate around refilling. And that was very important consequences that came out of the audit. In the other instance, the waste audit showed that there was a problem with the recycling practice and there was contamination across the waste streams. And the realization was that the SPA team was not properly educated, and it provided the SPA with an opportunity to educate them further. So there's lots of stories that we can learn from the measurement process. And what comes out here for me is that as an industry, we know how to measure. We've been doing it in our businesses. We know exactly what information we can get out of measurement, and we use it. We also understand the importance of sustainability. I think it's now a matter of marrying the two, which brings me to the next conversation point. And that is, if we are going to measure, what are we going to measure against? Should we devise our own industry guidelines? And Michael, I'm going to ask you this question. I mean, when you established GSN Planet so many years ago, it was your vision to create an independent, separate entity from existing green hospitality and tourism movements, recognizing, I think, that we have our own particular impact. I wonder if you can share a bit of your motivation there. Just check your mute button.
That would help. Yes, we were participating in a larger organization, a group of us who were interested in these issues, and came to discover that we just were not getting the type of response we wanted from that large organization, and came to the realization the only way we're really going to be able to make it happen was to launch off on our own, so that these values could be first and foremost in terms of our activities. And of course, it's been a long journey, adding up to 16 years now. But I would say that, you know, some of the distinguishing factors for us as a community within the spa world certainly have to do, when you contrast it to the other hospitality businesses, is the very personal and deep connection that we make with our guests. And I think we're afforded a much greater opportunity to create an experience that has the potential for really helping people make lifestyle changes. And that is in fact why people are crossing our thresholds every day, is you know, they are looking for relief from the stress and the suffering in this world, and they are making a very deep commitment. I mean, they're leaving their wallet at the front desk, they're leaving their clothes in the locker room, and they're getting on a table naked, and they're so vulnerable and so open. So I think that the degree of receptivity and the opportunity that we have as an industry is much higher than the other hospitality industries. So as we think about, you know, what we could do as an organization, where we've been guided is to think about, okay, what are the key touch points that would communicate the most to our guests as they have the experience in our facilities and with our people? What point of contact is the teachable moment that does not appear as a teachable moment, but appears as a somatic integration with the spa treatment that they're having, so that this false division between planetary wellness and personal wellness is erased, and people understand they're not making a sacrifice by coming into this type of an environment, but it's actually an enhancement to their own well-being in a palpable way. So these are kind of the aspirational ideas that, you know, we had as a foundation for how we wanted to approach things. And so, you know, from where I sit, I think that the primary opportunities where I think we're going to be effective, we need to focus on a few areas where we really know we can make a difference, and where what we can be known for, where we can really get some traction. And you know, from where I sit, it seems very obvious that efficacious personal care products that are safe and clean. People so much want that, and there's so much disinformation and greenwashing out there in that space. And it's been so difficult for the very sincere, dedicated people who have joined the organization as vendors, wanting to elevate their brands. And you know, how can we really authenticate people are doing the right thing, and help that for the guests, be a reliable source for that. So I think that's a real primary opportunity area. So Charné, I don't know if I'm answering your question or not. Let me know.
Michael, thanks. I think what you're saying is we are much closer to the idea of sustainability, at least from a philosophical perspective, than any of the other tourism or hospitality industries. So we're already so tuned in what we are already offering our guests. It's a short step to sustainability and beyond, actually. And yes, that is true. I think we need to consider ourselves as an independent community and deal with that when we start thinking about specific guidelines that we will be measuring ourselves against. And we are not the only industry, mind you, that does that. It is really only relatively recently that one of the largest sustainability reporting frameworks realized the importance of sector-specific guidelines. GRI, or the Global Reporting Initiative, in November last year, for the first time, published sector-specific standards for the oil and gas industry. So there's already acknowledgement that different industries should be treated separately. And I mean, as you rightly say, Michael, we have a very specific impact. We have our professional and retail products to look at, which is unique from any of the other industries. We also have a very particular impact on waste. If you think about it, we are one of the few industries that actually contribute to all the different waste streams. We contribute to general waste, organic and compostable waste, and recyclable waste. But in addition to that, also hazardous chemical waste and medical waste too. So our impact is definitely quite different. But something that you touched on, Michael, and Trevor, you as well, is the question around external verification and certification, and where that fits in when it comes to an internal audit. I mean, we spoke about greenwashing, and we spoke about the information that you get from an external audit that you may not necessarily have yourself at hand. And my question to you, Trevor, is, well, why did you decide to go for external certification? I'm not sure whether you did that also for your carbon footprint, but what was your motivation?
So there's a saying in the industry that you're not organic unless you're certified. And I think, you know, after I mean, not personally overseeing the running of a factory, but certainly via our COO, Bridget, you know, it's just, the temptation is enormous. You know, you have an external country expecting stock. You can't get hold of one organic ingredient to make the product. I mean, the temptation with a group of shareholders would be to go for profit, right? And no product to sell, no profit. I think without an external audit to keep you honest, it'd be a tough call to make. You know, you would be under pressure from the board. There would be, it'd just be a business decision to override your ethics. Look, I'm in the fortunate position of not having a board. I'm the only shareholder, and that there's a very key reason for that. But I know myself well enough to know that we need to submit to external audit. And I know our organization, and I know what a group of people who are just trying to achieve will do to win. And yeah, without that external audit, holding internal ethics is really, really difficult. I mean, we have an internal sustainability person. It's fine. You know, they're senior in the organization and they have my full support, but it's without that external view, like I say, internal narratives win. So yeah, I think in the form of the organic certification, I quite like the way that the Cosmos standards are now pressing harder on packaging, for example, you know, where they're making 100% certain that, you know, you're using packaging materials like polypropylene and others that are slightly cleaner in their production and less damaging post-production. Yeah, and I think that informed our split between glass and plastic quite clearly. You know, when we were looking at, you know, we looked at the carbon load of glass. It's heavy, and you know, it's moving it around the planet is costly from a carbon emissions point of view. But when you compare it to plastics, you end up pretty much quits, and that's what the external audit shows you is, you know, you thought you were doing such a good thing with glass, and you thought you were immune to, you know, you thought you were immune to criticism because of it. But yeah, it turns out that from a carbon load point of view, that pretty much quits. It's just how Post handles it now. You know, like a lot of glass is recycled because it's economically viable. And like I said, you know, the global figure, I think somewhere around 27% of plastics recycled, but there are a lot of countries that are close to zero, you know. So Yeah, I think that external audit is critical. And as a person who really dislikes bureaucracy, it's difficult. You know, the people that are attracted to an environmental sustainability kind of, you know, those are the people that hate the system and aren't interested in accounting and dislike maths. You know, it's not like we're all number crunchers, you know. But I think without those number crunchers, it's hard to tell what's making a difference. Are we really different, you know, or are we're just like stuck in our own narrative? Yeah.
No, thank you very much for that insight. Kenzie, have you considered external certification in your group, and what was your experience?
Yeah, thank you, Charné, for having me. I am so honored to be part of this esteemed panel. I did want to make a comment to your first question, and then I'll come back to that one about the sustainability standards for the spa industry. I have a unique position overseeing 12 properties and seeing it from a full property perspective, and how the spa is only a single entity of that hotel. We are really the leaders for the hotel in terms of creating those sustainable standards. And we're kind of the voice saying, hey, it's time we think about you know, our consumption, our waste. And I just wanted to mention that because it really is the spa industry is setting the stage, especially in the US, for saying, hey, we really need to think about green business. So I wanted to address that since I see it from a big picture. And then going back to your question about certification and self-assessment, it is something we are looking at all the time. I'm interviewing companies all the time looking for a certification and self-assessment, both supporting us in getting our properties up to standard, allowing internally looking at how we're assessing food compost in our restaurants, or how we procure retail, or our services in the spa, how much water are we using, and the materials that we're using. And I also oversee CapEx, so the development side and the renovation side, and we're looking at how can we procure or select things that are more green and more focused to be more sustainable, local, even hiring architects, designers that are local. So when it comes to certification, why I find it so important, especially in the US, is in European countries, it almost is a standard. When I travel there, I know they're doing the right thing when it comes to sustainability, or they're at least farther in the direction of sustainable organizations. But in the US, we have something called a free market, which is amazing. But it also runs itself to source and do what we want with not a lot of standards. And so if we are looking for those certifications to show, hey, we're a B Corp, for example, a company becoming a B Corp, we're going through these extra rigorous conversations and checklists to ensure that we're sustainable companies, we're green businesses, we are certified clean. I think there was a post-COVID certification going around that you could put a sticker on your door basically saying you're COVID certified and you have a clean environment. So the consumer is looking for that. They're very awake to what sustainable tourism looks like, and becoming more awake in the US more than ever, I feel. And so we want to have those labels on our doors because they're looking for those labels. Is this a LEED certified building, you know, for example? And they're getting educated, and the more they become educated, the more we have to step up our game, because social media, give or take, good or bad, is actually educating the consumer to say, hey, you really need to read and do your research behind the label. I think Tara made a comment I really liked about organic and certification, and not all organic certification is 100% organic, for example. when you buy, you know, an organic produce in the market, it only has to be like 75% organic, for example. So it's very interesting once the consumer starts doing their research, the validation of that certification, and that the jury's out, I think, in terms of finding that valid certification. There's a few out there, but when it comes to the spas, I'm yet to find one that I feel 100% good about.
That's interesting. I mean, I have some comments about that, and the fact that there are so many certification agencies out there, all with different standards, and it creates confusion with consumers. But I want to give Michael an opportunity to talk a little bit about GSN Planet's attitude towards certifying others. I think you would be in an excellent position to do that because of your long-standing experience with sustainability, but it is a decision that you have decided not, or a business practice that you've decided not to adopt. Michael, why was that?
Well, I can only speak to where we were and what made that our decision when we started the organization. We saw, as has been stated, there are so many certifications already. And I think B Corp is excellent, actually, one of the very, very best. And, you know, a certification program is a resource-intensive endeavor, and it takes a lot of focus to make the decisions about how you're going to make your determinations. I mean, an example, just looking through this one that you're working on now, which is brilliant, and yet I could see a point where there's a lot of room for discussion about organic cotton sheets, which we used religiously for years. And then when we started to really delve into the metrics, we discovered, hey, cotton fibers do not clean well. It's very difficult to get the oil out of the cotton. And after 6 months, these very expensive, wonderful sheets were rancid because the oil heats up in the dryer and they stink and you have to throw them away. So we ended up getting microfiber sheets. And they last for years and years and years and years. They're totally comfortable, and they use 1/3 the energy to dry them. But this is an example of all the rabbit holes you get to go down if you're going to decide to become a certification body. It's very time consuming. It's resource intensive. If it's going to be validated by independent inspections, which is the only way to really have it be bona fide, then, you know, there's a lot of fees involved, and it ends up being one more layer that ends up being a lot like tax, government compliance, and accounting layer added on, you know, additional burden. So GSN, when GreenSpa Network, when we started, we came to the idea, let's focus on being a culture of merit rather than a culture of metrics. Not to say metrics aren't important, because they're very important. And I really salute the work you're doing and the intent of the conversation we're having today. But what we thought about as an organization is we wanted to focus on the innovations, the successes, and really identify those and hold them up, like the shopping center you were talking about, Charné, in Australia, that has a totally regenerative program going on. And so the idea at the beginning of GreenSpa Network was we were going to work to really create excitement, enthusiasm, and energize and support the innovations where, and then people feel the creativity and break out of, you know, we didn't want to become the green police and have ourselves totally tied and bound in that, you know, work. So that was our intention. That's why we made the choice we made at the beginning. Is there a place for you know, measuring and metrics? Absolutely. And you know, I think the key challenge that I see is, okay, how can we bring that up and really get it implemented, and at the same time create the moment of aha for our staffs and our guests that makes it a spiraling up experience. and not one more bean counter misery, but how people can really recognize that this is important for good reasons and be able to celebrate it.
Yeah, it's about the heart behind it, isn't it?
Absolutely.
There's the detractors to the certification system. I mean, it is expensive for anybody to certify. It is time consuming. We've got all these certification agencies that we need to, we need to choose one, and we don't because we're not the experts. And then there's the other issue around it is the fact that the certification agency generate an income from the verification that they do. So there's an inherent conflict of interest. So there are all these problems. But then on the other side, greenwashing is rife in our industry, and consumers just do not believe any environmental claims unless it's certified. But my question then is, and I'm going to leave it there, because the problem is the problem of trust. Now, should we not address the issue of trust rather than having to run to external certification? Shouldn't we create trust with our own consumers as an industry, and start with our own businesses and create trust between what you do as a spa and your relationship with your consumers? But I think in the end, there's probably a place for both, for internal and external verification systems. And I think perhaps an internal system is a way to get your sustainability house in order. And then, you move on perhaps to a certification process if that's meaningful to you at that time as a business. But yes, that brings me to hi, Joanna, yes.
I just want to share a couple of things about what you have been saying, because I do think it's really important. And I think there's two important things. I think, GSN has really tried very hard to have a policy where we meet people where they are. Meaning, if we had standards that were strict, then it would prevent people from joining us and learning how to be better. And I think that we have felt that the better approach was to encourage everyone to join us and to teach them how to be better, right? And I think that it goes along with what you are saying a lot about trust, is that when people do join us or represent themselves at our various events or come to webinars like this, we trust that what they are doing is trying to become better, right? And that we make a difference in the world by setting the example and the standard of trusting and participating. While all that is said, I think that there is a space and a place for some type of certification, which is, why we really like your product that you have, because it is a bit more independent, right? In the sense that it's not aligned with any specific type of self-interest other than your own desire for the industry to be greener, right? And I think that there's a lot to be said for that. So, I think, one, we really congratulate you in terms of making this really significant effort into being in this space and creating something that at least gives people a guideline that's easy to use, right? So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And well, it brings me to the calculator actually, and the project that we have launched. And it is a call to spas from around the world to please participate. Download the app. It is available on most of the Play stores. Take the audit and share your experience. Give us some feedback. It is an industry tool. It costs you nothing. It is aimed at spa management level as well as therapist level. We wanted to be an educational tool as well. And I want us as an industry to see it as a step towards a better understanding of what we are doing. The tool does benchmark. You can benchmark your own business by doing multiple audits over a period of time, so you can track your performance. But it also, and that is the importance of the tool for us as an industry, it tells us what's happening out there in the world. So we know from the data that spas are struggling, for example, with their waste management, or they are having particular problems in the energy side. And as an industry, we can do something about it. I think we should not see sustainability as a competitive edge, but rather something that we can all answer. But Kenzie, you've used the calculator. What was your experience with it? Kenzie, sorry, you're on mute.
Oh, thank you. I actually really enjoyed it. And to Michael's point, I love how he mentioned the key touch points of the guest. And the calculator not only considers what those key touch points are that we may be considering, but it's also considering the building and the labor and measuring a variety of elements of the spa. Which I really enjoyed, even the maintenance side. And I'm very visual, so I really liked at the end being able to compare your score and seeing the graphics and the percentages based on your building emissions, energy, and environment. I thought that was really helpful for our teams to see, okay, where are the areas of improvement that we need to start focusing on going forward. Obviously, there's basic things that we are always trying to consider in terms of procuring sustainable retail or designing in a sustainable way. But when we take this calculator and we can really see the data and the metrics, that allows us to go to our stakeholders and say, hey, this is where we have room for improvement. So I enjoyed that.
You made a comment to me once, and I think it's important that that I share that. And you said that you have many properties under your care, yeah, that the spa manager or director does not have access to all the information that the calculator and the audit asks, and that is true. But that is not a feature of the calculator, but rather of practicing sustainability. And what I find so interesting in our corporate structures these days is that we've created silos within our corporate. So we've got your marketing department on the one hand, finance, procurement, and if you practice sustainability, you need to take account. It cuts across all those departments. So my advice always, when I talk to spas is when you create your sustainability team, get someone involved from every department, because you cannot on your own gather that information and create a positive impact.
Yes, so and to your point, those individuals need to have heart and passion and be practicing those sustainable goals, because if they don't, the sustainable initiatives don't play out authentically.
No, sure. I think we have kind of come to the end of our conversation, but there are so many questions. Some of you posted your questions in advance. I think we've answered quite a few of them. There are two that I'd like to mention specifically. One from Kent around the understanding of occupancy versus sustainability measurement. That is a very interesting question. I think it speaks to possibly the methodology, whether we take account of occupancy in determining our footprint. What we normally do is consider full occupancy, and then mitigate for that in our sustainability practices. I'm not sure, Trevor, I'm just throwing this out to you. In your assessments, your carbon assessments, did you take account of the occupants in any of your buildings? Was that ever something that was considered?
Sorry. I guess we're kind of lucky in that we're retrospective, so we know occupancy. So we're offsetting in retrospect for the previous year. And that's true so we have a training center in our tiny little hometown, and we have a concept store also I guess like I said, fortunate enough to know exactly what occupancy was. What we found out of some of the audits is again, it's the waste and the embodied carbon coming in that often's a major contributor. And so so when you're actually having to hand over hard cash to offset carbon, and you're understanding the embodied carbon in the products and particularly disposable parts of the salon, that's when you start feeling the pain a little, which is good.
We are definitely going to feel the pain. But yes, it really answers, I hope, Kent, the question. And that is that you consider full occupancy and you work backwards from that. Bear in mind that what we are trying to achieve, I think, ultimately with sustainability is, well, first of all, net zero. So we don't want to have any impact, but as Michael said, move on to regenerative behavior and leave things in a better place. There's one other question that I'm going to raise, and then I'm going to ask the GSM Planner team just to help us sort through the rest. A question was asked around how do we measure waters. I wonder if I'm happy to answer that. We really consider different types of water when you start with the measuring process. Obviously, your potable water or your drinking water is the most valuable water. But then we also take account of your recycled water, which is grey water or black water. And then we take account of water that you harvest, like rainwater. And that gives your potable water footprint. And that is how most of the water calculators work. What we've done in the GreenSpa calculator is go beyond that. We want to know what your ultimate water footprint looks like, but we are also interested in knowing the management around your water consumption. So we want to know whether you have a water management policy in place. We want to know whether you are actually meeting and discussing your consumption and keeping record of your consumption. We want to know whether you are measuring the different sectors within your organization. So do you have water meters in the different treatment rooms so that you can intelligently make decisions about which of your areas need to be improved? And also look at water quality. Do you add chemicals to your water and put that back into our water courses? So when we talk about water and our impact from a water perspective, there's quite a lot that we look at in the end. I hope I've answered that question. So I don't know what the others are. Joanna, if you can throw some out. Or Megan.
There's another one about recycling plastics. If we as spas purchase these plastic products, are we just contributing to the problem rather than avoiding plastics altogether?
Could I make a comment there? We've given it a full go. At some point, you're going to have to use some plastic. You can try to avoid all plastics, but as long as you're putting stuff in a jar, you're going to have to seal the jar. And it's there may be some innovative waxed cardboard solutions and bamboo, but at any form of scale, there is just some plastic that's going to be required. I think then that I'd be super keen to get away from using any plastic, and I'd also be super keen to get our net impact on the planet down to zero and be net positive. And you can try that, and that's what we are trying, to double down, to get, to contribute more by buying offsets. But yeah, it's tough. Don't underestimate how difficult it might be to avoid plastic in the modern world.
Charné, this is just, in some ways, this is such a complicated process and conversation. And then in some of the other ways that you all have highlighted here today, it can be very simple, right? And it's that paradox that makes this problem that we're having such a interesting one to discuss and tackle, right? Because it's this paradox of living as closely to nature and as simply as possible, combined with all of these extremely technological and complicated ways to measure, evaluate, and develop energy, water, recycling, all of the things that are complex in our businesses. And so it is so interesting to look at them on the continuum.
It can be overwhelming. I mean, absolutely. And that is, I think, where some businesses get stuck. And it's just such a big realm of issues that we need to tackle. And one of the questions that we had is, as a big property, what can I do to make a difference in, even if it's a small difference in every area? I think that's a very difficult approach to take. What I normally say is take one, go for waste, and tackle it properly, rather than ad hoc and a bits and pieces approach. I think it becomes overwhelming for your staff. It becomes overwhelming for your stakeholders. So grab one and ride it out.
Another comment is about the spas. It's difficult to see an example of our power, waste, and water. See if it's better in January during their peak season compared to their quiet season in November. So measuring different seasons as well.
You should be able to measure that, though, with your facilities manager and be able to see those bills. I think that all goes back to the whole silo piece, right? On property, if we are really activating everybody together, when you have that stand up or those EC meetings, we need to talk about what are our energy bills during this time and during the ebb and flow of the hospitality industry. It's even something that we've looked at in terms of automating everything. So when the guest checks out, we can turn off the air and we can, make sure there's no water running or anything like that. We do, room touches, and that's more on the hospitality global scale of the rooms. But, turning off any lights that were left on, the TV was left on, being wise about energy usage and setting up those standards when the peaks are low.
I think that's a great answer. Thank you.
And I think another comment about the heart, that what you're doing is to create awareness. Once awareness permeates at a critical mass, the mindset will drive it with heart, as I mentioned already.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Michael, you wanted to say something.
I just wanted to speak a little bit to this thing about it being so overwhelming. And I think that, Joanna mentioned meeting people where they are. And I mean, sitting on this panel, and I'm going to assume a lot of people listening in today are along on the path and have some capacity to embrace the complexity of this and deal with the gnarliness of it. But, there's a whole lot more people who are at a much more basic level, and they want, just tell me what to do. And so, part of what we've talked about at GreenSpa Network is coming up with like an entry level, 10 things you can do in the next 6 months to go from basic to whatever you want to call the first step of initiation. I mean, I can share a story with you about going as a guest to one of the most esteemed spa businesses that has a very big green profile, if you will, and discover they're using phosphate soap in the laundry. And they checked all the boxes, and everybody did their job, and they have a great rating. And yet in the little laundry room that was part of the suite, there was a phosphate soap sitting on the shelf next to the washing machine. So it's, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. And, I think in terms of this front end, creating no plastic water, and you could come up with 6 things or 8 things that are easy for everybody to do. And it would answer the what do I do question for so many of the people, and then give them, and then here's the next step, what they could aspire to, and then introduce them, to your program when they're ready, when they can take it without being, we can't do this, it's too much, right? I don't know, just some of the ideas that we cycled around again and again within GreenSpa Network.
I fully agree with that. I suppose we've been at this for 20 years now, and it's we've ground through a whole lot of nasty little cycles that have hurt us sometimes and been unproductive in terms of our net impact. But I think giving people a simple, clear course of action, the big impacts are usually water heating or water itself. It's just if we just give people a little action list, checklist, that gets them from terrible to average at least, or from average to marginally better than average. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for doing this today, having this conversation. I think it's important. And it's been our pleasure to host you all and have you talk about this work that you're also passionate about, which I think really does speak to the heart place that this comes from. And again, thank you for sharing your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Charné.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.